RtWebParts Security. Now this section is all about getting a good comfort zone that you're comfortable having your data exposed to people using our security that doesn't have the consequence of maybe confidential data being accessed by people who are unauthorized. Should be too loose security. Or you've got data that's just so secure that when somebody new comes on board or your boss wants to look at it or doesn't normally look at it, you don't want it to be too inconvenient. Security would be too tight in that case. Now ideally it would be nice if we just had a little slider you could control, but we don't have such a thing. Unfortunately, there are many different players involved when it comes to RtWebParts security. Some of the players are Internet Explorer. Certain security settings have to be set up in the options for Internet Explorer. Network security is involved, both getting to the RtWebParts server and then from that server to the Pi server. There's SharePoint itself. Security is set up. There are settings within SharePoint to consider. Windows security is involved because a lot of our trust-based access is granted based on Windows usernames and passwords. There's also security involved with SQL Server implementation for SharePoint. And finally, there's Pi security. Now, Pi security, which is granting access or not access to certain tags, that actually involves a special user account. It's a Windows user account called the IIS Application Pool Identity Security account. We'll talk a lot more about that later on. But that's one of the players in this. So as you can see, it's a fairly complicated group of things to manage. Now, ideally, if security set up properly would give you the right level of security for the data source level of security. By that we mean, the Pi data itself, who has access to what. There's also the level of access that's granted by the viewing application. RtWebParts itself has certain security built in. And then, of course, as I said, the internet, whether you're internal or external, there are security settings to make sure that the right people see that data over the web. Now, if you are using Windows SharePoint server, or if you're using this on an existing domain, then a lot of what we do is simply going to leverage existing Windows Active Directory settings. And that's because the Windows users that we pick up, the Active Directories we pick up, are going to be passed on to the trust table when we try to connect to the Pi server. So you will notice that as much as we can, we would like that security to be managed within RT Baseline, leveraging off of the users that are created in Active Directory. And we do that by using trusts that know how to recognize Windows users and associate them with certain Pi users. Well, we'll talk a lot more about that later on. But let's take a look now at some of these different layers. I mentioned there's many different layers. Let's take a look at a few of them. First one we have here is Internet Explorer. That would be the client itself. Again, that's a layer of security that has implications. There's some configurations on Internet Explorer that need to be set. Now, connecting to the RtWebParts server, network security is involved with regard to which ports are opened. You'll also see that comes up later on, network security, when we're going from RT Baseline to the Pi server. Now, this third item here is RtWebParts itself. RtWebParts is part of SharePoint, and so there are access or can be allowed or disallowed based on SharePoint security. So that's another option you have. Now the data security is piggybacking onto the Pi security that you may have known for years and years. So that data security component is really just making use of the same security settings we've had all along. That's going to be going out to the Pi server, reading the trust table, and then determining from that trust table what Pi user we associate this connecting client with, and therefore what tags he has access to. So to summarize, if it seems like a complex topic as we go through and as you look at the administrator's guide, you're correct. There are many different layers, and as we go through this particular section, we're going to be going one at a time through each of these layers and explaining what security we recommend.